start when you're ready. 3, 2. Is it filming already?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is that bad?
okay.
So how long has it been filming?
About 5 seconds.
Go.
Okay, morning everyone. We're just going to do a short presentation on the multidisciplinary and the interdisciplinary approaches in sports. We've got myself, Ben, Ollie, Matt and Louisa, and we will be producing 4 different sports and all the different aspects within. Next slide please. So to start with, we've just given you a few definitions of multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary aspects in sport. Multidisciplinary refers to the different occupations that can be seen within a certain sport, whilst the interdisciplinary is their communication within that sport. So that's just a brief overview of what we're going to be looking at. So my chosen sport is rugby. Nice little image there. Nice. Next please, Louisa. So I've given you 2 of the grassroots, where it's normally fairly basic. You have a head coach, and maybe on a game day, depending on the club that you play for, you probably have a physio as well, and they will communicate throughout the game. But normally it's fairly limited. You normally just do training. You just talk to your head coaches about game plans and scenarios. And then if you compare that to the elite professional game, there is so many more disciplines within it. So you've got your head coach who runs the whole thing. You've got your physios, strength and conditioning, nutritionist, doctor, psychologist, massage therapist, and at the end there, positional coach. So you can already tell the difference between the 2 and just all the layers within elite sport that rugby players will go through to make them as elite as possible. And then I've provided a quick example of interdisciplinary approach within elite rugby. So if an injured player, for example, he would, after the game, go to the doctor who would diagnose his injury, obviously give him time for recovery, and then communicate with the physio, and the physio would then encourage recovery and rehabilitation and give him a time scale. And then he'll move on to the nutritionist who will say, for example, it's a broken bone, he'll introduce high calcium to calcify the bones, muscles, proteins to build the muscle up again. And then the head coach or positional coach will constantly be in the loop with each different aspect within the recovery time for that player. And so that's how that would work in that scenario within rugby. And then, doing with my work experience, I've been working with Bristol Ladies Rugby. They are an elite ladies team, obviously in Bristol. They have a lot of England rugby players, Welsh international rugby players. So I've been able to see how they work and the processes that they go through and all the different disciplines that they have. So that's how I've been able to apply all this to our presentation. They've had strength and conditioning, physios, and it's really good for me to see, although I've been doing more video analysis, I've been able to see all the different roles playing within the players and stuff. So yeah, that's my work experience.
Hi there, I'm Ollie, and my chosen sport was badminton today. Okay, so some of the multi and interdisciplinary approaches in badminton, but at a non-elite level. Now the problem with badminton is it's a very unfunded sport compared to everything else. So when it comes to grassroots or non-elite, realistically you've only got head coach, assistant coach, and mainly because you'll be at a leisure centre or a sports centre, you will normally have someone as an equipment guy to go and set everything up and take everything down. However, there can be more, such as, say, physios. If you're at a decent leisure centre where you're paid monthly, you may possibly have access to physios and massage therapists. However, when it comes to everything else, such as what an elite person will have, which I'll go into in a minute, it's quite poor. So there definitely is need for improvement within non-elite levels. So when it comes to like interdisciplinary approaches in badminton, it's quite important that the head coach and assistant coach are having so much communication between each other, because they're responsible for everything to do with the athlete that they're trying to train and perform well. Okay, so at an elite level, so I focused this on Team GB in the 2016 Rio Olympics. So just a couple of examples there. You've got a head coach, you've got an assistant coach, strength and conditioning, psychologist and nutritionist. There are more of this, but however, like I've said, which I'll go into in a minute about the funding, it's hard for something like badminton to actually have the same resources as something like football or rugby at the same type of Olympic Games. Obviously we had the rugby sevens introduced in Rio as well. Okay, so an example of how not working together, so how very poor interdisciplinary actions between them could actually affect the athlete in general. So obviously, as a head coach, you're in charge of everything. You've got to make sure that this athlete is prepared for the game, you've got to make sure his training is going well. So if there's not a good relationship between everyone, at the end of the day, they're not going to do well, they're not going to perform. And not that that happened at the Olympics, but that's shown where their target was to achieve at least one medal, they didn't achieve any, and they only got 1 4th to 6th place finish, which is part of the reason why in the end they got funding cut. So it's so important that someone like, if a head coach is thinking there might be some mental fatigue within the person, it's important that he can communicate with the psychologist and vice versa to make sure that come the next big games, the World Championships that they have, or even the next Olympics, it's important that his mind is set in the correct way. Okay, so a little bit about my experiences and just a couple of facts about badminton. So currently I'm doing work experience, that's over at Bridgewater College Academy, so not too far away from here. I have been playing badminton just casually for about 10 years, and I've come to really enjoy the sport. One thing that I have noticed over there is that badminton isn't a very big priority. So what I've been trying to do is set up a lunchtime club for people to come along, which has actually taken off quite well. And I've managed to set up about 4 or 5, well, more like 4 courts with a couple of doubles as well, people who want to come along. The idea of that is to hopefully then progress it and take it up to more of a regional level and try and get more people interested in the sport, to try and build up the grassroots. And just a couple of points about it, like I have been mentioning, you know, it is indoor-wise, is the most popular indoor sport in the UK and America. As to give that some format, in America, 1.2 million, as a poll, 1.2 million people say they play badminton, and 750,000 say it's their favourite sport. So that goes to show the numbers that are there, but the bottom one is quite tragic when you look to see that at the Olympics, £7.4 million was their budget, but because they didn't achieve the goal they were set, that's now been cut to 5.9 million, and actually that's one of the lowest in Team GB's ranking system. The reason it's not the lowest is because of things like basketball, which has actually had its funding cut altogether. So in a way they're lucky, but it doesn't help when you're trying to build up the grassroots as well as keep the elite level. Okay, so the lower levels of every sport need to be improved, but especially from my experience in badminton. Because at the moment, as with every sport, you've got an elite level and you've got a non-elite level. And what you want to try doing is, with the funding you've got, is to obviously close the gap, but at the same time moving it up so that the quality is improving. However, that's quite hard because of the funding and because of the general interest in badminton compared to other sport. So I just figure more funding to help get more interest with quite a good campaign can actually help improve it.
I'm Max. I'm going to talk about cricket instead of the other two. So looking at a club level, which I took mine for example, because obviously I play there, there's not much when you look at the multi-interdisciplinary. You get your coach and your assistant coach, but they tend to be volunteers. They tend to be people who kind of play there, they know the club and all that. Obviously that means that the interdisciplinary is very close. They all know exactly what they're doing, they all know how they're going to do it. to coach because they're all like mates, they're all friends. But as you can see, you don't get your physio, you don't got your batting coach, bowling coach, fielding coach, as you will see with your like elite level, where they have a whole range of facilities. I mean, all the clubs get. The good thing about a club level of cricket is it's quite well funded by the ECB, which is like the top board. So they'll get like nets, covers and stuff. So every club in England is pretty well funded, which is one good thing about cricket, is the difference between club and elite isn't too much. So you can go up to Somerset and have a trial and have a thing. So if you're good and you enjoy what you do, there's not a big gap. And if you look at the elite, as you can see, the list is quite considerably bigger. They have the same kind of thing, so every kind of club has that head coach that does everything, that runs everything. But as you can see, you get more technical, so instead of just having a coach that coaches everything at elite, club level, you get your batting coach, bowling coach, fielding coach. To kind of change that, when you are a cricketer, you either know a bat, bowl, field, you kind of choose which one you're better at, whereas at elite level, you get that I am a batter, you will just bat. You don't do the bowling, you do the fielding, but you don't do the bowling. Same with bowling. Obviously, when they're working together, with this one, it's kind of quite complicated because if you're in the batting and in your bowling, obviously that's separate, but fielding's all done together as a team. So if they've had a hard batting session, they go to field, they might not want to do it. If you had a hard bowling session, you might want to do it. And again, if it's easy, they find it hard. So it's real important that they all communicate, so they don't overtrain, they don't tire each other out. Because they have a match maybe three times a week, and some of them are up to 5 days long. So they've got to be real careful, and they've got to make sure that like the nutritionist he knows what they're doing, the physio's there in case they get injured, so they're ready for the next match. All things like that, just to make sure that they're all fit for those 5-day games. Looking at my work experience, I coach under 11s at Middlezoy. I am the only coach there to do the under 11s, so I have to do batting, bowling, fielding, fitness, everything from like bottom level to top level, like batting, like not even basic. And there are 3 of us, but we all do the same thing, split between levels. However, we are quite well funded, so we've got all 3 equipment, all like 3 bats, 3 cages. So as you can see, the funding is quite well done between cricket. However, when you look at us coaches, we are all volunteers, so we have to make sure that we get together before, we all know what we're doing, where we're doing it, because we don't want to get in the way of each other, so it's pretty key that we all kind of combine as one. There are lots of different things. We ran a club, like a taster day over at the Bridgewater, is it College Academy? We ran a taster day to get people into cricket, which is all funded by the ECB again, so it's all well funded, but we've got to make sure that we all communicate together properly to get it to fit.
So I'm Louisa and I'm doing basketball. And basically looking at club level, just like every other sport, there isn't a lot going on. There's only a coach and maybe a fitness coach. This is from my experience playing basketball at Bridgewater College. And basically, they are volunteers, so they're not getting paid to do it, so you can see that there's not a lot going on. Because there's only 2 people, so 2 multidisciplinary approaches, it means that they're quite good at communicating with each other, they're always chatting and they're always getting things done quite quickly. However, that can be a disadvantage because they can have a big work overload, and that can mean that they're working longer hours. And from the experience I had when we went up to play for nationals, one of the coaches had to leave because one of the girls got injured, so he didn't get to finish watching the games that we were playing, so he didn't get to help us. And it can affect not only the player that's got hurt, but also the team because we didn't get his support for the rest of the games. Then for the elite level, so I was looking at Team GB as well, you can see that there's a lot more going on. There's the coach, there's doctors, biomechanics, nutritionists, the kit man, psychologists and everything like that. So looking at the coach works closely with the biomechanics because obviously they have to focus on different skills, so you can place certain dots around your joint so you can film it, you can see if you're doing the skills properly. So if you're doing a free throw, for example, you can record it several times, see if you're doing it right, if your angle is right or wrong, or what you're doing and what you can do to improve. Also, the nutritionist, working with the dietitian. Basketball is a very fast-paced sport, so you're running up double court, so you have to have the right food. You can't have a lot of carbs, and you have to have that balance of everything, so you're able to keep fit throughout the whole game, and you're not getting tired too quickly. Otherwise, you're just gonna get subbed off. There's also the psychologist, because obviously at elite level you may have fans, so you have to have people that kind of control your mind and say not to get too stressed with things like that, because obviously you have to know how you act towards them, and you might get stressed because you didn't play well in a game, and fans might lash out at you for not doing what you were meant to be doing, so you have to know how to control your feelings towards that as well. Another thing, the doctors, unlike the club level, you're going to have doctors there with you for the elite level. So you're always getting sprained ankles and fingers as well. So to have the doctor there, it makes it a lot easier. An advantage of having all the multidisciplinary approach to it is that each person's going to have a different subject they have to look at, so the job's spread out equally. However, that can be a disadvantage because there's too many people doing everything, and it may confuse the player. The player might get overwhelmed with what's going on. They might not focus on actually playing the game. They're going to be getting different opinions from everyone, and they may not agree on something. The multidisciplinary approaches might fight who's the most important, and that just overcomplicate things. So sometimes it's quite good to have the whole range of people that you can get help from, but sometimes it's also quite good to keep it small, because then they know each other, you know what you're doing. Another negative is, if you have so many people, is that it can happen like Chinese whispers. So the coach might not talk properly to the doctors, and then the doctors might do something that the coach is not happy with. Then the nutritionist won't know how the coach wants their players to be like, so overcomplicate things. So overall, so linking to my work experience, I work at Heathfield School, and I coach the Year 8 and Year 9s basketball, and I'm the only assistant coach, and then there's the main coach. The ages are split in school year, so I work with 12 to 13-year-olds. I also used to coach them when I was in school, when I was at Year 11s. I also used to coach Year 8s and 9s. But it's not that well funded, because obviously it's a school team, so the girls and the boys have the same kit, which is a bit disgusting. And each lesson we focus on something they need to improve on from what we have seen in the game beforehand. So it's nothing too technical, it's all about learning the basic skills and the core skills, and making sure that they can basically shoot and drive the ball up the court. So overall, you can see that every single sport at your club level, you're going to have only a couple of people working together, and they're going to be, the communication is going to be quite small, so things are going to probably get done quite quickly. However, at an elite level, you have so much more going on that things may take longer, but the results are obviously going to be a lot better, like they're going to be going to the Olympics and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you for listening, and any questions?
Excuse me, at the elite level, if you could pick 3 people, I loved your diagram, if you could pick 3 people that were the most important in the multidisciplinary approach, who do you think they would?
I'd probably pick the coach, the biomechanics, because they work closely together, and for basketball, probably the doctors as well, because we get hurt constantly, because it's such a fast-paced game. For example, I always get hurt when I'm playing, so to have that person always there with you is such a relief, because you know